I just got back from a home inspection with a client because, I want to give you all the home information so you're making a great decision on that home that you're purchasing, especially as a first-time home buyer. By the way, my name is Tony and I help people just like you find homes here in the GTA. So if you're thinking about buying a house, my contact information is below. If you like the content, feel free to hit that subscribe and bell icon to get notified of all the updates happening here in the GTA. I thought this was a great video to do because I'm still hearing about people who are waiving the inspections here in 2026. So this should be a great video for the first-time home buyer and for the home buyer in general. So here's my top 10 deal breakers when it comes to home inspections. And a lot of times the seller is going to address these problems, just making them aware of them, and the deal should still get done, but they're going to be picking up the bill on these items. And if the seller refuses to do anything, then you should really reconsider what's going on here. And this list that I'm going to give you, these are costly items. First one on my list is major foundation issues. We're not talking small little cracks in the basement flooring. We're talking about huge cracks on the side of the house leading into the basement where water has gotten in. A lot of times these cracks are either very horizontal, zigzaggy. They don't look like straight line cracks. Typically, these are signs of major foundation issues. So if your home inspector is finding these, he's going to give you advice on what to do and what not to do with these, especially if there's water coming in. And sometimes I recommend getting a structural engineer in there to making sure that those cracks aren't anything too extreme. So listen to what your home inspector has to say, and if he recommends someone coming in to take a look, make sure that gets done. And just so you know that structural issues in homes are very, very expensive to fix, especially if it's something along the lines that soil or water is causing the damage. That's going to be super, super expensive to fix. And going forward, we don't know exactly how it plays out. Next one is the roof. If the roof is near the end of its lifetime, so if it's been installed for 20, 25 years, 30 years, you might want to reconsider the deal itself. Unless you can negotiate with the seller on a suitable solution that works for both of you guys. See if there's something we can do to remedy that by getting a credit or renegotiating the deal. And the roof is something you don't want to mess with. It might not be leaking today, but eventually, 2-3 months, it will start leaking. And once it starts leaking, you get different issues. You'll have mold issues to deal with, drywall repair issues, paint repair issues. It's something you don't want to deal with as a first-time home buyer or as a home buyer in general. So if there's anything the seller can do, make sure you approach them and see what happens. Depending on the size of the house, this could be a $10,000, $20,000, or $30,000 repair, and it's something you don't need to do. So the next topic on my list is the air conditioning and the heating system, or known as your HVAC. So let's say your HVAC system is 20, 25 years old. It's at the end of a lifespan, and it is still working at the time of inspection, and it works properly. If it's an older system, you want to find out how often it's been serviced. When was the last repair done? When was the last pressure test done on it? There's a bunch of questions you might ask. If the seller doesn't know, then you might wonder, has it been serviced at all? But if it hasn't been serviced, I would consider getting the furnace and air conditioning replaced. That being said, let's say you do have a complete history of all the service records. That will still buy you 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 5 years of service, but the unit is old. It is going to be replaced. So you're going to have to take that in consideration as well. If you see rust on the outside of the units or on the inside, more likely than not, it is failing and it's time for a replacement. You might have issues with this in the next year or two. See if the seller will offer a credit. Again, these are really expensive items to fix and replace. A furnace can easily run you $5,000 to $10,000, and the air conditioning $25,000 to $5,000. Again, depending on the size of the property. Here's another deal breaker for me is electrical problems. Recently, I was in a house and I saw an outdated electrical panel. It still had fuses. Not breakers, but fuses. And we're talking $10,000 to $15,000 on replacing that electrical panel, bringing it up to today's code. There's going to be a lot of cases where the seller won't do it, but as long as you're aware of the situation, you make that informed decision on to proceed or not. That is up to you. But if there's a lot of knob and tooth, or there's aluminum wiring, or the panel, like I said, is very dated with fuses, you might want to back out of the deal. Because let me tell you, if you have outdated electrical systems, the panel, the wiring, you are asking for problems. And then there's a safety concern on this. These are more susceptible to fires in the homes, especially when the systems become overloaded, if you were to put a car charge or baseboard heating or whatever the case may be. Once these systems get overloaded, the risk of fire increases greatly. Let's talk about the plumbing. For me, this could be another deal breaker. And what we're going to be talking about is sewer line, especially in older homes. You want to know if there's been a backstop valve installed in some of the older homes. And here in the GTA, Burlington, Mississauga, Toronto, Oakville, what a backstop valve really is something that prevents water, sewage water, coming in to your house. A lot of these older homes don't have that. It's a clear pipe all the way through. And if anything were to happen with the sewer lines, it can come into your house. So a backstop valve prevents that from happening. Let's talk about mold and excess moisture. If there's mold in the house, you're definitely not dealing with that. You're going to come to an agreement with the sellers and get some type of remediation done on that mold. A lot of times the inspection report will come back with mold in the attic. Don't be afraid of it, but make sure it gets resolved. Recently, one of my clients purchased a house, and yes, there was mold in the attic. This home was about 35 years old. It's expected that they're going to find something. But after it's found, it's how it's dealt with. We were able to negotiate with the seller on getting the remedy completed, done before my client moved in. They provided proof of work being facilitated. We got the contractor's information, and we got a warranty that everything was done properly. Then go ahead with it. The seller isn't willing to negotiate it, you might consider walking away from this deal. And let's talk about water. If you see water stains in your basement, along the walls, along the floor, along crack lines, it's another area that is concerning. Have your home inspector take a good look at that and see what they recommend. If it's not a lot of water coming in and it can be managed, then having the cracks filled or fixed might be the solution. But if there isn't an obvious reason why there's so much water or so much moisture, then you might want to reconsider purchasing the home. A lot of times these home inspectors will have either thermal or moisture sensing devices that they can scope basements. Even though they're finished, they can see if there's an area that has a lot of moisture that can lead to bigger problems down the line. Another deal breaker is basically environmental issues. And more concerning is asbestos. In older homes, you'll see asbestos tiles, asbestos insulation. Those items, the removal of those items are very, very costly. So especially if you're going to be doing a rental in these homes, you have to be prepared to spend a lot of money on asbestos removal. And as a first-time home buyer, that's exactly what you don't want to deal with. So just so you know, asbestos in the 40s and 50s wasn't a concern. It was very common to have asbestos tiles, either in the ceiling or in the floors. It was a product that was being used a lot. Fast forward to today, asbestos is very dangerous, especially the removal of it. And as we're talking about older neighborhoods in the Toronto area, we're talking about those old oil tanks. A lot of times you'll see these oil tanks in the basement, or they might be outside, or sometimes they're buried. Those items, those tanks are expensive to get rid of. And as a home buyer, you don't want to be dealing with expensive items to remove. Now, if it's still in use, that's a different story. But if they're not in use, you want to make sure it's removed prior to you moving in. And don't forget to get the area tested for contamination. And this deal breaker is a failed septic system. If you're doing an inspection and the septic system fails, these are costly items to repair it. And sometimes a complete removal and a new septic tank is required. So unless the seller is willing to work with you on getting a fix for the septic system, I would avoid it at all costs. Any situation like that would be a big deal breaker for me. Let's talk about wells. So if you're thinking about purchasing a house with a water well, you're going to have to get that inspection done. And that's a different inspector altogether from your home inspector. This is a more qualified person. It's a more specialized person looking at the water. And they're going to ensure that the quality of water is good. They're going to check the flow. They're going to check the spacing from the septic tank if so equipped. They're going to check a bunch of different things that your home inspector might not do. If the water report came back contaminated, I would walk away. You also have to realize that there's a lot of specialized equipment. You're going to have water filters, water softeners, UV equipment that treats the water itself. So if there's an issue with this report that comes back from the inspector, reconsider, because this type of work is very expensive to get done. That's it for this list. Let me know if there's anything you would add to it. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll gladly address it in another video. Thanks again. Have a great one.